This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo, giving you the inside track on all the big talking points from Anfield.
Hello and welcome to this week's Liverpool.com podcast. I'm Matt. Addison and Michael Plant is alongside me as we talk through Liverpool's 3-0 win in Marseille in the Champions League. Before we get stuck into it though, don't forget to get the best discount off your NordVPN plan. You can go to nordvpn.com/bloodred. That link gives you 4 extra months on top of the 2-year plan, and there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link with all of the information on that is in the podcast episode description box. Let's get straight to it though, Michael. It was a big win for Liverpool. We thought it was going to be a big night really in terms of their season and just instilling a little bit of confidence. Obviously, a few boos at Anfield last weekend. It was important to bounce back, and I think it's fair to say Liverpool did that. The Champions League has been a vehicle to do that for them a few times this season. They've done well in, the obvious exception of that PSV game. But yeah, a really impressive performance from Liverpool in the circumstances.
Yeah, I agree. I think they played really, really well. It was probably one of the best performances of the season. I mean, you wonder potentially if it was the best performance of the season, but certainly up there. And, before the game, I think we did a lot on the fact that it was actually a really high-stakes match for Liverpool. Had they lost last night against Marseille, they'd have been in a really difficult position to qualify for the automatic last 16 of the Champions League. I would go as far to say as had they lost last night, they would be out of the running really. But now a win puts them in a fantastic position. They know that all they've got to do is beat Karabag next week. I mean, I don't think that should maybe be taken for granted, given actually had a look at some of their results in the Champions League this season, and they've done much better than I maybe anticipated. But still, you would always fancy Liverpool at home in the Champions League against, still one of the lesser fancied sides in the competition. And overall, it was a fantastic performance from Liverpool, and I think Arne Slot deserves immense credit. And I wrote an article for the morning saying that he was reminded before the game just about how much pressure he was under with that Xabi Alonso question in his press conference, and a question from TNT Sports about having to regain the support of fans. And he answered emphatically and put on a fantastic performance. He got his tactics spot on. He completely read how De Zerbi was going to approach the game, matched it perfectly, changed his shape, and allowed Liverpool to perform in a way that meant that they were able to kind of capitalise on any deficiencies in the Marseille side and ultimately won 3-0, and I think it was a very deserving scoreline. So, yeah, real credit to Slot and to Liverpool for that performance in France.
I think the key question now is whether they can translate that into the Premier League. Obviously, as you say, it was a good setup, a good tactical system. Thought it was really interesting the way that he positioned Ekitike and Salah very, very wide and had a couple of players, obviously Wirtz and Szoboszlai primarily, but Gravenberch and McAllister as well, breaking forward from the centre of that midfield. Whether that will work against a Bournemouth team at the weekend, maybe it will. I think, to be fair, Bournemouth are one of the teams that will come out and try and play a little bit against Liverpool. But I suppose that is the key thing, isn't it? They've shown in Europe, in the Champions League this season, that they can beat the best teams. They've obviously won against both Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid, Inter Milan away at the San Siro as well. This game as well was impressive. Whether that means anything for the Premier League chances, we'll have to kind of wait and see in terms of, obviously the confidence will improve, but will there be any kind of tangible benefits in terms of the system and the setup? But they're in a good position, as we say, in the Champions League. We've said a few times in the last few weeks that, the Champions League might be a good opportunity really for Liverpool because they look so much better against the better teams. Was this, do you think, another example of that being the case, that we might not see Liverpool do much more than, 4th or 5th in the Premier League, but whoever they come up against in Europe, there's always an opportunity and a chance, at least, that they could be able to progress?
Absolutely. And I think you've touched on two really good points in that and Slot has openly admitted this and openly admitted it again after the win in Marseille, that Liverpool are suited to playing against sides who open up and play expansively and leave gaps and opportunities for Liverpool to play into. And I think that was obvious against Marseille. Sometimes some of the spaces that they were afforded and the number of players Liverpool flooded into those gaps was really noticeable in comparison to recent games. And In the Premier League at times this season, I think they've been handed challenges and they've wilted under the pressure. I don't think that's actually in general been the case in the Champions League this season. They obviously lost against Galatasaray. That was a difficult game that actually could have gone either way as well. I think the one exception to that is PSV, when they absolutely did not deal with the spotlight, I suppose, that was put upon them. But by and large, in the Champions League this season, when they have faced a top side, Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, Inter, and then away at Marseille, which is a really high-stakes game, as to say, they've stood up to that challenge and they've shown that they are still a very, very good team. I would go as far as to say they have proven that they are capable of standing up to the best in Europe, going toe-to-toe with them. Certainly on a one-off occasion. I think perhaps is there an argument that over a two-legged tie, we're not quite as sure yet. I think there is an argument to that. But I think that they've proven on a one-off occasion that they are capable of going up against the very best in Europe and winning and getting the results. So that bodes very well for the chances, obviously, of certainly at least going deep into the competition. But I think, and I mean, Jamie Carragher touched on it last night as well, they do have a chance of winning this tournament, which is a strange thing to say, given, all the talk after Burnley and how down and pessimistic it is, but or has been at times. But I really do think they've got possibility of doing it. And I think, it's come back to a point you and I have said a few times in this podcast, they don't really need to be back up to full strength or flying until mid-March, which is, it's just under 2 months away. There's still a lot of things that can happen between now and then. Alexander Isak could be back as one example. Could they make a little addition in the final week or so of the January window? There's still a lot to tell in that. So, yeah, I think it was a performance that underlined they absolutely are capable of going very, very deep in this competition. What's your thoughts? Do you kind of agree with that view?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it before, haven't we? When Liverpool won it in 2005, that the league form wasn't great and the focus switched to that. There is evidence that can happen. I mean, even, I don't want to mention PSG because Arne Slot has done that more than enough in the last few weeks. But where you even look at them last season when they were so poor in the first half of the season, okay, they made a January signing and Liverpool are not going to be signing Kvaratskhelia in the middle of the season, which obviously helped, but they were a completely different team in the second half of the season. So there's definitely an opportunity, I think, for Liverpool. A lot of it as well, as ever, not just with the Champions League, but with the FA Cup as well, will come down to the look of the draw, who they get. When they got to the final in 2022, they had, favourable draws all the way through, really, up until the final. I think, was it Villarreal in the semis? A lot of it will come down to that. I think if Liverpool were to draw, I don't even think it's necessarily possible, but if they were to draw Real Madrid or Bayern Munich or someone in the next round, that would be a real test. But quite easily you could get 2 or 3 decent draws and suddenly you're in a semi-final and you just don't know. So yeah, it's definitely set up nicely, I think, for Liverpool. The fact that they have done it enough times this season. Okay, Real Madrid, they weren't peak Real Madrid when Liverpool beat them, but it's still a big game and a big opportunity to show what you can do, and Liverpool did that. There's been enough of a body of evidence, I think, this season to show that the players are stepping up in those games. It obviously suits them better, and I think it probably suits Arne Slot better as well in terms of what he wants. We know how much he hates the low block and thinks, I think he said in his press conference something along the lines of, there's only so much tactically that you can do against the low block. There's only so much that he can influence in terms of those things. Now, that's a separate point, and I think he probably does have to find a bit more of a way in the Premier League. But, for the Champions League, that certainly bodes well. So, yeah, it's set up nicely, isn't it? And I think that kind of leads us into a couple of individual performances that need to be picked out. I'm going to start with Joe Gomez because he's one that Arne Slot picked out as well. Was really, really impressive. I thought his passing was superb, but just to be dropped into a game like that and into a team which, is lacking options, he wouldn't have been there if there wasn't, a personal matter for Ibrahima Konate to deal with. But yeah, how good was Joe Gomez last night?
Yeah, really good. You're right about the passing, but he also made a number of really good defensive contributions as well. And the centre-backs, I mean, they do this a lot, Liverpool, but I noticed it last night. The centre-backs actually pushed quite high and followed the striker when he dropped deep. And Gomez, he made a couple of good tackles there as well, which gained Liverpool possession quite high up the pitch. And I think Gomez is a funny player, really, in that he is probably one of the few that divides opinion amongst Liverpool fans. I think that it's my father-in-law's a big Liverpool fan. He's not keen on Gomez at all. And I disagree. I think he's a really good top quality player, actually, that when he can be dropped in, will often do a job. I think the issue has always been just the ability to to stay fit and to produce to regularly play matches, which is obviously, as we know, been a real challenge for him. But I think when he's called upon, he always does well. I think he's always better as a centre back than a full back, personally. But and it is good for Liverpool to know that amid all the defensive issues, that if something were to happen to Van Dijk or Konate, which is more long term, that Gomez is there as an option to be drafted in. But yeah, so there were some other really good performances as well, as a thought as well. And I was interested. Sorry, what did you say? What did you think of Hugo Ekitike's role, kind of playing out wide and coming inside?
Yeah, again, that's an interesting thing that I thought we might see a little bit more of when he came in. Obviously, the fact that Isak has not been producing or been able to produce for Liverpool to this point means that he's had to play a lot down the middle. But I do wonder if we will see that a little bit more. We discussed, I think, on last week's show, or certainly the week before, that Liverpool have left themselves a little bit light of options. Obviously, Cody Gakpo and Rio Ngamoa to play down that side. But I thought Hugo Ekitike did well. I've always liked his link-up play and his sort of intelligence. There's a little bit of a Firmino-y type. I don't know quite how to describe it, but unselfishness and that ability to sort of bring those around him into play, to drop very deep, connect things, I suppose is the best way of putting it. So I liked that. I think he's been involved in matches a little bit more in previous games, and he's obviously scored and shouldn't probably have been offside when he puts the ball into the net. Should be a little bit cleverer in that moment, but. Yeah. I think there's a big question mark when, Liverpool haven't got that many attacking options at the moment. And even then it was hard to sort of work out what the balance was going to look like and how you get Ekitike, Wirtz, obviously Mo Salah now that we'll talk about. When Isak and other players come back in, it's very, very hard to get that balance right. But if Ekitike is an option off that left-hand side, I think if that can be something that creates that balance and finds a way of getting Wirtz and Salah in the team, then obviously that can only be a good thing.
You're right, actually, when you see Ekitike play off the left, and he played off the left for France recently. I think it was a game against Ukraine. He came off for about half of a half, so 23 minutes, and he was absolutely outstanding. Scored a goal, created a whole load of chances. And you do see him play off the left, and you do think actually maybe that could work. And then suddenly you can envisage a front four of Salah, Wirtz, Ekitike, and Isak, and actually that would be in a system that would work. And yeah, I thought it was really good, Ekitike, and yeah, was unfortunate a little bit. I think I agree with what you say. Probably shouldn't be offside for that goal, but he also had to make that run, didn't he, and get in front of the defender. So I think he maybe just got it wrong. But I do agree with you. There was a moment he could have just held back just for that split second more. And I think, yeah, in general, look, he continues to play a very pivotal role for Liverpool because. And I think in some ways last night showed that Liverpool are no longer reliant on Mohamed Salah. And actually, when you've got players like Ekitike, that's part of the reason why Wirtz, I thought Frimpong was very good again from the right. And then Szoboszlai is always going to produce a moment of quality in a game. And it's really actually becoming a real goal scoring asset now for Liverpool as well, that perhaps we didn't maybe envisage at the start of the season. So, yeah, I think that we are still learning how. And I think Arne Slot is still learning how he wants this team to set up, how he wants them to play with all the new signings. And actually, you're seeing game to game more adaptations, certainly than we saw last season, and tailoring the approach for the individual opposition. And for instance, I thought the midfield balance was brilliant against Marseille, and they picked and choose, they chose their moments when to press, when not. But when they decided to go as well, they really committed two of those kind of midfielders, and then at least one, but sometimes two sat back. And it actually meant that they had a more solid base to defend, to kind of defensively, but also producing and committing enough numbers into attack as well. So I think it worked really, really well. I think the one question maybe I come away from it was, and this is maybe a bit harsh considering it's his first game back and everything that's happened, but wasn't massively over enamored with Salah's performance. I don't know what you thought of it, Matt.
I thought he did okay. Obviously, being out with the team for a little while, I think there was a bit of a narrative, and to be fair, even Arne Slot said it, that Liverpool hadn't been scoring that many goals. They created, or certainly had, a lot of shots against Burnley, and the kind of idea was, well, maybe if it was Salah who was on the end of one or two of those shots, then maybe it would have been different. I think Thierry Henry said that as well, actually, for CBS when he was working as a pundit on the game. But I do think that's slightly simplistic and maybe overlooks one or two of the issues that were there earlier in the season. He did have a couple of good opportunities, made a complete mess of the one-on-one, I think, late in the game. But I suppose, as with any striker, the fact that he was in those positions, that's a good thing. I didn't think he was bad. I didn't think he was amazing. I just thought it was kind of fairly middle of the road, I think, for Mo Salah. But it was more a case of the balance was good for me. We've seen Florian Wirtz step up the 7 games that Salah was away. Wirtz scores 4, assists 2. I think it's fair to say becomes Liverpool's main creative attacking hub. There was a bit of a question mark in my mind of, well, is it a case of Wirtz or Salah? And do you have to pick one or the other to build the team around? Long term, there's only one of those answers that is going to happen for Liverpool. But to me, that there was enough just about to say that actually, yeah, you can play both of them together. It can be balanced, and that was a good sign, I think, for Liverpool, because they are ultimately going to have to find a way of playing both of those players. You can't just pick one or the other and almost have like an Isak and Ekitike situation. They're both very good players at their best, and you've got to find a way of making the most of them. So, yeah, I thought he was fine. I think it will be more interesting to see what happens when Liverpool do play a different kind of team, a different, as I say, Bournemouth probably will come out and play a little bit against Liverpool. It won't quite be the same as Marseille, but I think there will be a bit more of an end-to-end nature of that game. I'm more interested when in a couple of weeks' time they go to Sunderland and they have to break Sunderland down, or Wolves or teams like that. Will Wirtz and Salah then look quite as nicely balanced as what they did? I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good point that those are the games that actually that Liverpool now need to find a way to manage and to pick up 3 points from as well. But yeah, I thought Salah I agree with your assessment. He was okay. And to be fair to him, maybe coming back from AFCON, that was the best we could kind of expect from Salah, because he's obviously just, a couple of days ago, he was with a different team, and they're suddenly dropping back in, expecting to play a fantastic role in what is a slightly different Liverpool team than the one he left. It was maybe a lot to ask. And I thought he linked well with Frimpong down the right. I think I can really see some of those overlapping runs from Frimpong being a real threat in the second half of the season, and a real advantage. It's obviously kind of Liverpool hopefully kind of go deep in the competitions as well. And yeah, his shooting and maybe sometimes his final passing was a bit off. But yeah, we'll see. We'll give him credit. We'll give him time and opportunity, obviously, to fix that. But I do, you do look at his goal scoring numbers this season, and then you look at the kind of the finishes last night, and you think he does need to get back to the Salah of last season still. But maybe that's probably a bit harsh for me, really. But yeah, there was certainly, I think overall, though, he did contribute to a very good team performance, and that's probably what Slot will want to focus on. And I think he'll just be pleased that it finally seems that everything that happened after Leeds has finally been put to bed, and he, Salah, and the club, at least in the short term now, seem to have moved on from it, which I think is a real plus for everyone.
Yeah, just the fact that he came back in and there was no big story, he wasn't the person that we were talking about, I think is a good thing. And even the fact that Cody Gakpo comes off the bench and scores, that'll do him a world of good in terms of his confidence. It feels a bit more like now Liverpool have got a few options that can score goals. You mentioned Dominik Szoboszlai before, obviously a nice free kick. Obviously a couple of slightly more difficult games before that with the back heel and the missed penalty. So that was a good thing for him to be able to get on the score sheet, and a clever piece of work from him to get the ball underneath the wall. So it just feels to me like there's a few more options. That there were times when Salah was struggling that it felt like if Salah didn't score, then probably nobody would. I think maybe that's changed slightly, which is obviously a good thing. But yeah, just to talk about Dominik Szoboszlai as well, I thought he was Liverpool's best player. I think he got the man of the match award from UEFA as well. He's just such a good player, isn't he? It's easy to talk about the mistakes that I have mentioned there, but across the course of this season, that's not the Szoboszlai. This Szoboszlai that we saw last night, that's the version of the player that we've got this season, and he's just such an important player for Arne Slot at the moment.
Yeah, and obviously he's got his technical talent, as we're seeing more and more with, the goal against Barnsley last week, the free kick against Marseille. But what he also brings is real energy and real, almost that enthusiasm that rubs off on other players. I think Jordan Henderson had that a little bit of times during his Liverpool career, and I do think there's similarities there with Szoboszlai and his off the ball work, and technically he is brilliant, and he's providing real game-changing contributions, and also links well with teammates. And I think that one of the things that was really good about Liverpool's midfield in Marseille was how quickly they moved the ball. And I think all four were, maybe the slight exception of McAllister, but certainly three of the four were instrumental in that, and all did their jobs really well in that regard. And Szoboszlai was obviously key to that as well. And I think we've spoken about him a lot. He's unquestionably Liverpool's player of the season. I think that even if he had a stinking final 3-4 months of the campaign, he'd probably still get it, because he's been that good up until this point. And listen, obviously the Barnsley mistake wasn't good, and I think it was a really bad look. But even in that Barnsley game, he played really well, and I didn't think he was amazing against Burnley, but not horrendous or anything like that. But so his performances, while he's had maybe 2 high-profile errors and issues, I suppose, the performances have actually still maintained at a good level as well. So yeah, long may it continue from a Liverpool perspective.
Yeah, 100%. And again, it's just that nice balance, isn't it? We've spoken so many times about Liverpool not looking quite right, but I think as long as Dominik Szoboszlai is in those positions, whether it's bombing forward from deep or whether it is in that final 30, he does look very comfortable in the Liverpool system at the moment, which is only a good thing. And I wanted to touch on the 2 fullbacks as well. You mentioned Frimpong before. I thought Milas Kerkez was pretty good as well, solid defensively and showing plenty of energy. The fullbacks, if Liverpool are going to play this system that we've spoken about and the formation and setup that Arne Slot went with, I think it's safe to say that the fullbacks will be pretty important in providing the width and being able to get forward and show a bit more in the final third. We've not fully seen it from either Kerkez or Frimpong. There's been more glimpses than anything sustained, but again, I think there were good signs with both of them last night as well.
Well, it goes back to a point that you and I think made last week, that the Kerkez defensively is getting much, much better. There's the less frantic, screaming Virgil van Dijk that we became very accustomed to in the first couple of months of the season. We've seen that less and less. And I think, though, that I don't think, well, maybe I'm wrong, but as time is going on, more and more I'm questioning whether we're going to see the Kerkez of Bournemouth who just bomb forward. Almost didn't, not that he didn't have to worry defensively, because he did, but was just so focused on getting the ball and advancing in possession that it seemed the defensive side was almost second a little bit. Actually, as Frimpong is the case a little bit now, maybe I think there's an argument to say, but I think when you've got Frimpong and Kerkez, I don't think we're ever gonna see really a system where we've got both fullbacks bombing on repeatedly, and actually probably that makes sense. I think it is difficult to have that in certainly given Liverpool's issues as well at times of being countered on this season. So I think that if we're going to see one of the 2 fullbacks bombing on, and it looks like those 2 will be the fullbacks, obviously, over the last couple of months of the campaign, you do suspect it will be Frimpong more than Kerkez. And I think Frimpong probably has already justified that with the number of decisive moments he's had in the final third. Obviously, he didn't actually get the assist once again last night, but he's had some really good moments. And he set up a goal against Spurs, didn't he? He set up a goal against Wolves. I think there's a few others. Did he set up against Leeds?
Fulham, wasn't it? There was a Fulham cross to Gakpo.
Yes, they fears he didn't score against Leeds, actually. Yeah, so it'd be good if he'd got an assist in that one. But look, the balance of the team is looking much better, and it's just now it almost feels a little bit. The final piece is just breaking down these low blocks, and it sounds much easier than it is, but it is a huge issue that Liverpool still need to address. And the fact that Slot, even after a 3-0 win in the Champions League, one of his first responses in the post-match interview was, but we've got to, and sort of referring back to the Burnley game and the issues of breaking down a low block. It just tells, I think, how much is on his mind and how big a problem it is for Liverpool. And I agree with what you say. I think that there was a throwaway comment that almost like, well, what can we do when it's a low block? There's no way around it. It's like, you've got to find a way around it. And, I covered Manchester City for a number of years, and Pep Guardiola repeatedly found a way to get through those low blocks, and Slot needs to do that now, and that is probably the big test and the big challenge, certainly in terms of the league, that is going to probably define the rest of this season, I suspect.
And the way that Pep Guardiola did that usually was to have a winger, Raheem Sterling used to do it every week, where he would do that kind of Jeremy Frimpong thing of, stop and then go and then get to the byline and then pull it back. And that's exactly what we saw from Jeremy Frimpong. I think that is definitely the way forward. If Liverpool could maybe have one or two wingers, Rio Ngamoa, I think, has the potential to do that at some point in the future. How long away that will be, I don't know. But it's those kind of things, isn't it, that that's how you break a low block down. That is the answer. I'm sure Arne Slot knows that, but it's just a case of how do you get those players into those positions. Maybe can you have it on the other side with Kirkes as well? As you say, it's probably quite hard to have both your left back and your right back bombing forward when you're trying to be defensively secure and that kind of thing. Again, I feel like I've used the word balance in every other sentence throughout this podcast, but that's what Liverpool are aiming for, and that's kind of where they've got to. We're coming towards the end, but is there any other key points do you think we've missed from that Marseille game? Because it feels like it was a real step in the right direction for Liverpool. I suppose that is the bottom line, isn't it? To go and win 3-0 against anyone in Europe is impressive, and if nothing else, Liverpool should get plenty of confidence from that.
Yeah, I think so. I think the big thing I come back to is that the Slot deserves immense credit for that game. I just think tactically how he set up, and I mean, I do have to laugh that he pre-match was saying, De Zerbi, one of the best managers in the world, got real attacking philosophies, and I identify with those attacking philosophies, and then sets up in quite a counter-attack system as well. So, killing them with kindness a little bit of flattery, I suppose. But I think he just deserves immense credit, and I think that it was proof once again that Liverpool can go toe-to-toe with the best in Europe, I suppose. And one point I was actually going to ask you earlier, and the conversation kind of went away. I'm intrigued to get your thoughts that, we've seen it in the one-off games, but do you think against Europe's very best, let's take Arsenal and Bayern Munich, who are the two sides who are top of the table right now, do you think Liverpool could go and beat one of those sides over two legs?
Yes, in a word, yes. I think it will be very tight, and I think they would have to dig in for a lot of it. I don't think it would be a traditional Liverpool way of sort of going and attacking and maybe blowing a team away like we've maybe seen, in the previous seasons with Jurgen Klopp in particular. Obviously didn't quite get to see it last season with Liverpool going out relatively early on, but I do think it would be possible. They've obviously gone to Arsenal recently and drawn and played really well in that kind of game, and then I think you have to factor in Anfield for a different leg as well. I think will make a big difference, but if it was a Bayern or a Real Madrid or an Arsenal, I think it's more of a coin toss. I think if Liverpool can avoid those teams, let's say for the last 16 in the quarters, you get a couple of easier, nicer looking rounds. I think if Liverpool were playing that next level of team down, Sporting or Leverkusen or somewhere like that, I think you'd have pretty good confidence, I think, going into a two-legged tie against one of those teams that Liverpool would be able to get through. It would just be nice to be having a little bit of an easier draw before that. I think that could maybe go a long way for Liverpool to go a long way in the competition, as it were.
Well, they should also, the way it's looking, obviously the top sides, we mentioned Arsenal, Bayern, PSG are the same. I mean, Real Madrid, I don't think they are quite in the top 3 or 4 teams in Europe right now, but they're always going to be a difficult opponent. They look like they're going to make the top 8, which means that Liverpool would avoid them, wouldn't it, in the last 16? So you're getting even to, before you play maybe one of the very best in Europe, it's going to be a quarterfinal. That's 3 months away. So there's so many questions about what Liverpool are going to even look like by then. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was thinking as you were speaking there, could Liverpool beat Arsenal over 2 legs? Well, I mean, technically in the Premier League, if you look at the aggregate scores, then they've already done it against Arsenal. But I think right now, if they would have played Arsenal or Bayern Munich over 2 legs, I think they would probably win. But the question is, can they keep building on the momentum? Can Slot keep finding the answers? Can the players keep beginning to gel and find more chemistry? And by the time we get to April, who knows? I think by April, there's every chance Liverpool over 2 legs could compete with Europe's best. Yeah.
And just to add to that as well, I think by that point, I mean, who knows? Maybe Arsenal will have secured the Premier League title by April. It's possible that is the case, but you'd imagine from this point at least, it's probably likelier that Arsenal would have more riding elsewhere, whereas Liverpool's focus primarily might be the Champions League by that point. Maybe that could sort of come into it as well, potentially. But then I suppose you're not quite as convinced as I am that we get
That's why I'm laughing. I was laughing. We're not coming back to this point again if they're going to get top 4, but yeah.
Well, yeah. For the 5 minutes after the final whistle at Burnley, I wasn't maybe thinking quite along those lines. But
yeah.
Let's see what happens at Bournemouth. If Liverpool can take a bit of confidence and bring Mohamed Salah back into it and get going on the right track. But yeah, plenty of twists and turns, I'm sure, both domestically and in Europe to come across the next few months. But I think we'll leave it there for this week. Thank you, Michael, for joining me, and for you guys as well at home for watching and for listening. And we'll be back next week with the next Liverpool.com podcast.
This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo, giving you the inside track on all the big talking points from Anfield.